From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. We at Pod Therapy want to send our thoughts and prayers to the survivors of the Las Vegas winter storm 2019. We in Southern Nevada know that 41 degrees is just a number and doesn't fully capture the struggles that we had to overcome in the past week. Together we will overcome and we will rebuild.
We will rebuild.
And now broadcasting from the Churn, that guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Dude, it snowed in Las Vegas, Nevada. That was awesome, man. Opened up my back door. My kids are like running around out there. We made a snowman. That was awesome.
So, yeah, I was going to stop. I was driving by on Friday because schools were closed Friday.
Yeah. Snow day. We had a snow day.
Yeah.
That's never happened.
I was driving by, actually, your old junior high school.
Okay.
That you went to.
It's weird that you know where I went to junior high.
Yeah, well, because we live in the area.
Oh,
so
okay.
whenever Laura and I are driving by,
Yeah.
I always like to point out and say, hey,
Sylvester.
Jim went to school there.
Oh, just to mess with her?
Yeah.
That's a really famous school. Jim went there.
Jim went there.
Number one alumni from that place.
So on the neon sign out front, it said, school canceled.
Yeah.
Drive careful.
Yeah.
And I wanted to pull over and take a picture of that.
Yes.
Because
just to memorialize
the
this
sun's
day.
out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The streets are dry.
Clean.
There's
Right.
palm
Yeah.
trees.
Nothing.
And the thermometer in my car said 41 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah. But we shut down the state.
I was so confused. Why I was driving around.
Yeah, it was fine.
People were like, "Oh yeah, we're closed. We're closing the schools because of ice."
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
No.
Oh, dude. No.
There's no ice.
There was a run on the banks. They like cleaned out all the grocery aisles. I was hoarding food, stealing water. Yeah. Like I was ready. Snowpocalypse 2019.
So
man.
meanwhile, my sister sends me a picture of her place this morning.
And it's like 10 feet deep.
Yeah, there's a drift that goes over the car. And then there's snow coming in through the garage.
Oh my god.
Through the garage door. The door is closed, but there's snow like coming through, and there's like a pile of snow inside.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That is insane.
And so my reply to that was like, oh, now you understand what we went through.
Yeah. Now you get it.
You totally
get
it.
Our deepest condolences. It's funny because my wife was like, snow is great. Like she's outside. She's like, this is fantastic. It's so wonderful. Why do you say snow is such a bad thing? And I'm like, this is not snow. Like this is not Chicago. Okay. It's great outside. It's like 50 degrees.
Yeah.
Like there's a sample of snow on the ground enough to like, put a foot in, and she's like, this is fantastic. And I'm like, dude, no, this is not snow. Snow hurts. Like snowy areas suck.
We made it through.
Yeah.
We survived.
We did. Congratulations, guys.
Yeah.
It's a really big deal. So we did it. And now we just, we rebuild, right? Mm-hmm. So Las Vegas will rise again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also I want to shout out, just going to give everybody a little teaser.
Yeah.
The Grunt Work podcast.
Yeah, Grunt Work.
So it's a podcast all about the TV show Home Improvement.
Yeah, Tim Allen. Yeah. Such a cool idea.
So the two hosts, they're comedians, and they they talk about this. They follow like every episode, one episode at a time.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, they go through the whole catalog. Yeah,
through the catalog, and so I was a guest on their show.
Nice.
It's going to air sometime in April, so look out for that.
Oh,
It'll
cool.
be interesting. So we kind of talked about masculinity on the show.
Nice.
And just each one of the characters and some of their characteristics, and
that's really cool.
We
talked
about
a good topic.
Yeah, we talked about the relationship between Tim and his wife Jill, and then Tim and Al.
Oh, cool.
And just all these different things.
Who was your favorite character on Home Improvement?
Well, probably Tim.
No, that is false. That is the wrong answer. The right answer is Wilson.
Right.
The man who you never saw.
The guy next door. Yeah.
I loved that bit.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about him too.
Yeah, Wilson's like the sage. Like he comes in with all that great advice.
Yeah.
Just cleaning his yard. Yeah.
We talked about, because Jill in like season 3 goes back to school for psychology.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of started talking about some of the stuff that she talked
cool.
about on the show. And
so if people want to find that podcast, where do they search for?
Search for Grunt Work.
Grunt Work. Okay, Grunt
That's
Work.
the name of the podcast.
Awesome.
And like I said, I don't think it's going to air until like April, so just watch my Twitter because I'll tweet all about it.
Cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. Thanks for the invitation, Grunt Work, guys. Appreciate it. That's awesome.
And we have an update from
Jeff.
from one of our listeners who wrote in. So if our you folks remember, he wrote in about the open relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
And so he sent us an update.
It was a couple weeks ago.
Email.
Yeah, it was for Valentine's Day. It was our Valentine's Day episode.
Right.
He wrote in about an open relationship that he was feeling really uncomfortable with, and he didn't know, how to confront that and kind of figure out the next step.
Yeah.
So what was the update?
Well, the update is they broke up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So he decided he just was not comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And just wasn't going to pursue it any further. He
Yeah.
said he felt really good about it. But then he kind of talked about she was wondering, could they still be friends? And so he was sounds like he was a little bit on the fence about that.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's the update.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to hear that he feels a sense of peace with it. I mean, I think our advice, I don't think that we slam dunked that idea. We'll never tell somebody go break up, but I think that we were saying, hey, this is pretty incongruent, and if you're feeling this tension, admit it, be honest about it. Don't lie to yourself. So it sounds like he came to that conclusion on his own. So good, man. I'm glad that, we could be, a second opinion on that. And sounds like he was able to find what he was looking for.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What is your opinion on being friends with your exes?
So I was thinking about that too.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there are some situations, some circumstances where that would be okay.
Yeah.
But I think you do need to have time apart.
Right.
And
yeah.
if later on down the road, if you kind of reconnect and you want to become friends, that's fine.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people want it to just be friends, and I think that's fine. I think that's the right thing to do when you're breaking up, because you're not going to say, so it's over and I never want to see you again.
Well, it keeps it amicable, right?
Yeah, that's not the way you break up.
Yeah.
It's over and I never want to see you again works too.
That's a very effective way to finish that relationship.
Does the trick.
Yeah.
Personal experience, I can tell you it does work. 5 for 5 stars. But I know a lot of people just want to keep it calm. They want to take the sting off of it. So they say, hey, let's be friends. It's funny because I tweeted this. I should probably save this for the apologies, but I have this bit that I do with my wife all the time where I'm like, I walk up to her and go, hey, will you be my girlfriend? And I did that in front of our friends, and my wife's friend was like, oh my God, that's so cute. My wife was like, no, it's not. That's how he tells me he wants a divorce. And it is. I do that all the time. That's how I tell her I want a divorce. I'm like, hey, will you be my girlfriend? She's like, knock that shit off. I've been married for 13 years. I'm not going to downgrade to your girlfriend, stupid. I'm like, whatever. So congratulations, Jeff. Glad to hear that worked out. Be wary of the friendship thing. I think that that's always a little bit of a snare. Give yourself some time and some space, and trust that you're going to need that. So, but thanks for writing back and letting us know how it went, man. That's awesome.
I always love follow-ups.
Yeah, definitely. So as we open the show today, we're not going to start with a technique this time because we've got some really good letters that have been bubbling up in the hopper. And just remember, if you have not written in and you've ever thought about it, write in podtherapyguys@gmail.com, or you can write anonymously at podtherapy.net. And even if you want to write in with somebody else's story and you just want to be anonymous about it, but say, hey, I have a friend going through this, that's okay to do too. Just always, respect their privacy. Don't use their real name. So this first letter we're going to read is from Kate, one of our favorite listeners. She's an aspiring future colleague of ours. And in response to the episode about relationships, she said, hey guys, great advice about relationships and how partners who need constant reassurance can unintentionally damage the relationship by creating what they fear. Yay, self-fulfilling prophecy. I do have a question about that. If you are interested in answering, how do you balance a need for reassurance with anxiety? Like, that's something I worry about. I don't want to be overly clingy in my relationships with people, but sometimes to keep the anxiety from escalating, I'll ask questions to check in. My boyfriend, unfortunately for him, gets the brunt of it. Thanks in advance, Kate. Great question.
Yeah.
Huge. I see this all the time.
Right.
And people are getting in their own way. And whether it's anxiety just generally, like I've seen it both ways. I've seen I have general anxiety and I'm constantly, pestering my mate to reassure me about life. But I've also seen relationship anxiety, like a sense of jealousy of like, hey, I'm out with my friends and it's like, hey, can you FaceTime me while you're out with your friends just so I can see what's going on? And it's like, hey, are you checking on me? And it's like, I love you. I'm scared. I just need to be reassured or whatever. And like, that's a thing I've seen a lot.
Sure.
Jealous anxiety and fearfulness that the other person's going to abandon you or is secretly out with somebody else.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because it doesn't actually have to be jealous anxiety. It could just be insecurity about the relationship and just a fear that that you're not good enough for the other person, and then that other
Yes.
person's going to eventually dump you.
Yes.
That's very common. I see that a lot. I
Yeah.
think, and I guess, Kate, I think one thing I would recommend if you are already seeing a therapist or anybody else who kind of resonates with this, if you're already seeing a therapist, this would be a good thing to bring up in therapy, because I think a lot of it kind of comes down to, if it's not just anxiety based, it could be insecurity based, and it could be just low self-esteem issues. Because if you're in a relationship and you feel like you are the what is that term? There's that in relationships where there's the reacher and the settler.
The pursuer and the I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You're talking about like levels, like where you feel like you married up or whatever, like you found
And that, I think,
you got the low hand.
That does come with a lot of insecurity where you feel, and it's probably not true. Like, that's the other thing. That is just a sense that you have yourself. It's not reality. So a lot of people will have that sense that, like, oh my God, this person's so amazing. I can't believe I actually ended up with them.
Yes.
But I can't believe that they're still with me. They're going to do something,
Yes.
they're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then that causes this need to constantly check in. Like, is everything okay?
Yes.
Are we all right?
Are we all right? And also, more often than not, they tend to be very sensitive to being provoked to anger. And so they allow their minds to run away with them, and they imagine very scary things. If you call and your mate doesn't answer, if you text and they don't reply, if you're trying to call them and they didn't answer, and then you go on Instagram and they liked somebody's picture, we imagine the worst things, and we tend to overreact to that, right? And we get angry, and we start becoming vitriolic. And here's the thing. And Kate doesn't necessarily describe that level of it, but I'm taking it that far because I have seen this a ton in relationships. Both men and women do this. Mm-hmm. And I've always looked at it, I think, through two lenses. Whenever I kind of mentally do a preliminary diagnosis of what I think I'm staring at, the first one is usually a form of PTSD, because they have probably been cheated on in the past. They've had their heart broken, and they are very easily irritated on that. And they're constant. It's just what PTSD is.
Right. So
they're haunted.
It's a mechanism to cope with whatever trauma.
It's constantly reassurance seeking to make sure that they're not in danger. So it's partly PTSD. I think it also has something in common with OCD, obsessive and compulsive disorder. In obsessive and compulsive disorder, we have these intrusive thoughts that we cannot get out of our head, and then we have to do something behaviorally to reassure or to make that thought go away. And so if you cannot stop thinking about your spouse or your mate or your whoever with somebody else or out with somebody else or imagining these terrible fantasies, you will seek to reassure, and you will check on them. You need to check, and that's very OCD. Or you will call them and find out, or you will provoke a fight so that they feel like they need to call you or whatever. Another thing is also just general anxiety, right? So the general way that we're going to approach that, and one day we'll do an A block where we do a deep dive into the treatment side of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. We've done a show where we explain CBT. We've done a show where we explain cognitive distortions. And we'll do a show where we start teaching some strategies about how you eliminate a cognitive distortion. Because that's essentially what jealousy is. Jealousy at that level where it turns into deep anxiety and OCD and, a PTSD reaction, that is treatable, but it's treatable not by changing the relationship, not by getting your mate to have some kind of rules that they have to check in all the time and put a GPS on. There is no amount of checking you can do that will ever make you feel safe. It's not, and a lot of people think it's that. They go, well, I wouldn't feel this way if he wouldn't talk to his female coworkers, or I wouldn't feel this way if he would let me GPS him, or I wouldn't feel this way if he didn't have a password on his phone. And it's like, listen, man, that's not the thing. Like, there is no amount of checking you could ever do to scratch that itch, because it's inside of you. And so it's all born out of a cognitive distortion. You are seeing falsely the way the world is. And people who have listened to this show for a long time, peace be upon them, have heard us say that you cannot play relationship defense.
I was just going to say that.
You can't do it.
Yeah.
There's like 8 billion humans on the planet, 4 billion of each gender. Not getting into the nuances of gender identity here, but if your spouse or mate is straight, you are competing against 4 billion other humans.
Right.
You will not win. And so the only thing you can do to keep a relationship together is be the best version of yourself. And that does not include pathological insecurity. If you are pathologically insecure, ironically, and Kate points this out, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will push away the person. Right. You will lose the very thing that you are scared of losing by pursuing it the way you are. It's very toxic.
Right. So the defensive approach actually ends up creating the thing that they're most afraid of. And we've met Kate. Kate is an awesome person.
Oh, lovely. She made us
so,
fan art. I'm actually looking at a piece of the fan art for ICS that she drew as well. It's behind that dragon. You can't see it. I
can't see it. But, and I think that's one thing that I would encourage everybody to really take a look at is focus internally. Like, what are your good qualities? What are this person is with you in this relationship for a reason.
Yes.
They're not, there's always a reason why they're with you. So take really try to divert your attention and your focus back to that. Use some kind of technique to remind yourself to take an internal audit of like my good qualities. What are the really good things I've got going for me? How am I contributing to this relationship? And understand that like they're making a choice to be in that relationship with you.
Yes.
So, lighten up on the defense a little bit and, play some offense.
I agree with that. What's interesting is the way you treat this. And it's interesting because we don't think, pathological jealousy. And, you don't think of it as a diagnosable thing, something you use hard treatment for. You really do. Mm-hmm. The way that I treat this when I see this is two ways. One is through cognitive behavioral therapy and getting them to self-assess. Mm-hmm. And like you say, take the thought to court. Yeah. Where's the evidence for this thought? Well, he's out with friends right now. Okay, did he break up with you before he left? Well, no. Did you have a letter that he sent you? Or there must have been something that he said, like he's interested in other people. Well, no. Okay, so the evidence for this idea is that there are other humans who exist on the planet whose genitals he may be interested in. But we have no statements from him saying that he is. So he's guilty until proven innocent, right? Well, no. Okay, so let's take the thought to court, right? Yeah. Where's the evidence that it's not true? Well, we're in a relationship. Has it been happening for a little while? Yeah. Okay. When's the last time he told you he cares for you? Like right before he left. Right. So hold on. The last thing he said. But we have to take that thought to court. And then the other way that we'll generally treat that is the way that we'll actually treat OCD, which is with response delay. I want to teach somebody to delay their natural reaction to that fear, the compulsive part of OCD. Right. I want to delay the behavior of seeking reassurance so they can sit with the discomfort for a while and self-address it, tell themselves the truth mentally before they start reacting or letting it change their behavior, their attitude, or their self-belief. So that's a huge, great question for this kind of a show. And really, it provokes me to want to do a really deep dive, I think, into the treatment side of cognitive behavioral therapy.
I think we also need to look at the other person in this relationship. Yeah. So what about if you are the person in a relationship with somebody who does this, who has a lot of these insecurities? It's not your job to fix that problem, but there are ways that you can help. There are things that you can do. And a big part of it is just kind of knowing the other person and knowing some of the things that they like. What are some of the things that you do that reassures that person? Right. Do those things more often or on a consistent basis. You know, and kind of help that person along.
Yeah, I like to see couples playing offense, not defense. Mm-hmm. Being the best version of themselves, having a high capital in their love bank, knowing your partner's needs, knowing their languages, investing in them, and, addressing this insecurity. It is always toxic. It will always push people away. And again, to be fair to Kate, she did not specify whether this was jealousy anxiety. She just said general anxiety and that she seeks reassurance. And so the good news is that whether it's a jealousy type or just a general type, the treatment side is the same, right? Because we don't want to overstress our mate. It's okay for them to be part of our story. But we also want to make sure that we are self-sufficient in dealing with our own mental health.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss sports and feelings. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's Theraproducer sponsor is David Datascoop Villalon. Here's an excerpt from David's blog located at www.wgdavid.com. Serial killers probably make excellent neighbors. Every time they arrest a serial killer, they interview the neighbors. And first and most importantly, the neighbors are alive. If a serial killer preyed on their neighbors, they would be caught too fast. So, living next to a serial killer seems to be a pretty safe place to be. Second, they always say that the killer was quiet and kept to themselves. They never caused any trouble. What more could you want in a neighbor? If you'd like to join David, it is brilliant. If you'd like to join David and make the show possible, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy. We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy, and our next question is about sports and depression.
Okay, greetings, Pod Therapists. It's Sunday after the #big game, and I live in St. Louis. In 2016, I went through a period of loss and depression when the Rams announced that they were moving. I was a huge fan. I even won a contest to represent the Rams at the season opener facility because of a custom flag I made.
Cool.
I dealt with the loss primarily by cutting the NFL out of my life. Now the hashtag big game matchup has reopened that wound. I'm dealing... Wow, we're getting to this late. Sorry.
Yeah.
Better
late than never.
We are behind on our mail.
Dear Pod Therapy, the Civil War has come to an end.
Chad, I hope you're okay. Okay. I'm dealing okay. The loss helps with it a bit, but I like how you guys discuss loss and pain associated with changing your identity. I felt that way about a sports team. I love the way you guys come up with the use case for therapy in all kinds of situations. Can you think of a sports fan-related situation where therapy would be useful?
Yeah.
Okay.
So to put it in perspective,
this is from Frozen Cusser.
Frozen Cusser's talking about the Super Bowl, and he's talking about how he is a fan of a football team called the Rams. And the Rams used to be in St. Louis, Missouri, where Frozen Cusser lives. And he was a big fan, and it was a big part of his life. It was part of his identity. He was like a mega fan. Well, the Rams left, and they left St. Louis. They went to Los Angeles, California, where they sucked for like a year. And then they went to the Super Bowl, and they were a killer team. They went all the way to the Super Bowl. They played the Pats. They lost against the Pats. So he's talking about, God, that was hard for me to see this team that I had such a connection to leave my town, then succeed in another town, and then get to the Super Bowl. Yeah, they lost, which he says actually kind of made him feel a little bit better. Like to see, right. It's almost like an ex-girlfriend. It's like, your ex-girlfriend leaves you. She's really happy with somebody else. You're seeing all these pictures.
Right.
She's out there, and then all of a sudden Tom Brady punches her in the face, and you're like, good.
Just like that.
Just like that. But, what do you think about that, Nick? Like depression related to a sports team. I mean, obviously we're going to bring Jacob in on this one because, Jacob is still mourning.
I feel like I could just leave right now and get some coffee and you guys could
feel like
Jacob
could. So Jacob, when the Saints lost to the Rams in a really dirty way, you guys were having a killer season. Drew Brees had earned it, and then it's all taken away. Have you ever experienced what you might call like a sports depression?
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of done with the NFL.
That's not a depression,
but it's not
He's
really
just done with it.
And it's also not really based on the Saints losing. It was kind of based on. It was kind of an all around crummy.
Right.
It's been a crummy few years in the NFL.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like I've given them chances and they haven't really come through.
Blowing it.
Yeah.
But no. So you relate a little bit to the sting. I mean of the loss.
Sure.
But I think in Frozen Cusser's case, Nick, it's a little bit different because he lost his team. Like it's one thing when your team loses.
I've never really had a team that I was really involved. Well, I guess that's not true. So there was a junior A hockey team.
Okay.
Back in kind of my hometown. It was about 30 minutes away, and I had season tickets all through high school. Me and a friend of mine, we went to every single game, and they moved. They moved the team.
Right.
And it was kind of crushing, but it was, in a way, it was almost kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Serendipitous, I guess, because they left after my senior year. So I left too.
Yeah.
So I went to college.
So it all worked out.
And so it did feel weird. It was really weird. It was really difficult. And then where I went to college, that city had a junior A hockey team in the same league.
Right.
And they were the rivals. And so I would go to a few of their games, but I couldn't get into it. I just could not.
I think there's a lot of truth to this. Like, whenever he wrote this in, this is one of those things that I think that it's easy for us to laugh and go, ha ha, sports is entertainment, so who cares? I disagree.
Well, because you get very involved in it.
Very involved.
And it's tribalistic. It becomes part of your identity. You're wearing your Carolina Panthers
I am,
stuff
and I have
now.
my UNLV hat in the car. So it's funny because my wife and I are huge Vegas Golden Knights fans. Everybody in this room is.
Right.
It's united our community after a tragedy. If the Vegas Golden Knights became like the Seattle Golden Knights, dude, I would be devastated.
I was just about to say that because
I'd be devastated.
The Golden Knights did it, and the Saints did it after Katrina.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
The Saints
Showed up.
The Saints were a giant rallying place for the people of Louisiana, and especially the people of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina.
And if they left?
And I mean, the first game back in the Superdome after Hurricane Katrina happened, they played the Falcons.
Yeah.
And they crushed the Falcons in that very first game back. And I mean, I've never seen again. I wasn't there. But I watched it on TV. I took the night off of the show that I was working on at the time. And I thought about going out. I was like, I could go out to a sports bar and watch this. I said, nope, I'm going to go to my house. This is when I lived in San Francisco. I said, I'm going to go to my house. I'm going to watch it by myself.
Yeah, and savor it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I cried.
Yes.
I'm sure.
I totally get that. That's
when
that.
U2 and Green Day played.
Yes.
There is a house in New Orleans.
Yeah.
They played the House of the Rising Sun there.
Oh my gosh.
For the and I mean it was really incredible.
Yes.
And it was a rallying point for the people after a giant tragedy. And
if they left,
it would be unthinkable.
Unthinkable.
Right.
And that's what I get it. Like sports and teams, like there's the show.
And the Rams is weird because the Rams were in LA before.
I know. Yeah. This is part of why I hate the NFL.
Yeah.
But like there's this show called Alan or Something Ruins Everything.
Adam
ruins everything. And he has this bit where he mocks sports team allegiance. And he says, well, it's stupid because all the players have changed.
Right.
The coaching staff has changed. The ownership has changed. And then he talks about like how they've changed cities. So there is no real legacy connection. And I immediately disagreed with that because as a guy who understands tribalism, like I get this, like you connect deeply with this idea of the identity of the team. It's the spirit and concept of it. Like if I told you right now, like imagine a Raiders fan. Did you feel that weird feeling of like, yeah, like that's a bad person. Like, I don't want to talk to a Raiders fan. Like, but it's weird because like that's not true. Like there's a lot of good people in Oakland, but it's like I just have that mentality. Or like a Pat, like if it's like if he would have said I love the Patriots, I'd be like one of these guys. Or Yankees fan, like Yankee, okay, you're one of those people. And it's weird because like that doesn't make any logical sense. Like these are just real humans, but like that's how deep like the tribalism goes.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I get it.
Drew Brees, when he retires from the NFL, if he wants to be the mayor of New Orleans, he can do it tomorrow.
Yeah, you were saying you can walk in. You're in my chair. Get out.
And I say that with no hyperbole at all. It's just like he could just be the mayor.
Yeah,
he could probably be the governor.
Yeah,
he probably could.
This is my state now. Yes, it is, Mr.
Sure
Brees.
is.
We're in your chair. Do you know anything about governing?
Chair warm.
Do you know anything about water policy or taxation? No,
doesn't matter.
I don't
Does
care.
it matter?
Does
No.
it matter? Yeah, I'm boss.
I could throw a tight spiral.
Have you ever seen me thread the needle? Have you seen me hit Ingram? Yeah, I have. Get in there. You're the boss now. So, to the writer, man, Frozen Custer, I completely get it. Like, I totally get that. I think that there is an emotional connection to sport and to your tribe and to your team. And I see the same thing in politics, tell you the truth, like, and so I think that like there is this effect, like whenever the wrong guy gets elected or your team loses, you feel a catastrophic depression and a lot of people tease you about it. But I think it's really real.
I have had those experiences where a team of mine will make it to the finals, and they're playing in the championship, and you're getting all excited. You're like, this is the moment. This is when it's going to happen. This is great and wonderful.
Right.
And then they lose, and it is like a heartbreaking feeling.
Oh, dude!
Like a girlfriend.
Do you
broke
remember
up with you.
when the Capitals beat the Vegas Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup?
Oh yeah, don't talk about it.
I cried.
Don't talk about it.
I cried. My wife and I were distraught, like for days. It was a problem.
That one hurt.
Yeah, we were talking about it
That
like
one
days later. Like it was just silence in our home. It was like a day of mourning. You'd have thought a president died. Like we were really messed up.
Yeah.
So Custer, I get it, man. And I think that the way that obviously I think that we can adapt to it.
Right.
I think that you find, a new identity over time. I think that's part of it too.
In the postscript, he talks about basking in the reflected glory.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So he talks. He's a former psychology student, and so he mentions two acronyms, BERG and CORF. CORF is cutting off reflected failure, and Berg is basking in reflected glory. And so basically it has to do with social identity theory, but yeah, it's a way that we ego protect. And so like, this is like whenever your guy's losing, you're like, well, I never liked him anyway. This is what people do with the president. Like when your president loses, you go, I didn't like him anyway, but so you campaigned for him, dude.
I experienced this, it was a couple years ago. It was the Vikings versus the Saints.
Okay.
In that game.
Oh, this one where Blair Walsh whiffs it? The kicker whiffs it. Yeah.
No, this is the catch.
Oh.
This is the one where the Saints blew it at the last second.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I grew up a Vikings fan.
Yeah.
And I had not watched a single game that season.
Yes.
But then that game, my girlfriend and I were watching it. And I like they were ahead and then they lost the lead.
Oh yeah.
And then I was yelling. I was yelling. And I was like, God damn it. This is why I don't watch this team. Because they do this every year. They always do that. And then he caught it and then he scores a touchdown.
I love this.
We did it.
But that's absolutely true. And like that's really true about psychology is we align with concepts and identities that are greater than ourselves because it sheds meaning and light upon us, right? So I'm American, we're strong, or I like the Carolina Panthers or whatever. Like you pick your thing and like you start to align with that, but when they start to fail, it hurts too much to your ego. And so you start to pull away. Like I'm a UNLV Rebels football fan. Even though we're the worst team in the history of college sports. Like, we literally get that honor because we flew in a lower division team for our home opener, and they beat us. And it was the greatest odds, like, in the history of sports betting. Like, if you would put a buck on this game, like, you were set for life. And it was Howard, and Howard destroyed us. It was Cam Newton's little brother, and, like, they ran the score. And we were just sitting there crying in the stands. But it's funny because...
So next year, the home opener is UNLV versus RFK Middle School.
Yeah. Like, we're scared to take on Bishop Gorman. Like, it would be too scary for us. But it's funny because we laugh. We have a gallows humor about it. And, like, Cleveland Browns fans had that for a long time, too, where it's like, we're so bad that we still show up, but, like, we complain about it. And, like, we separate our ego identity from the team by complaining about the team, right? And so, like, I totally get what Custer's talking about here. And, I think that obviously, feeling that sense of depression, first, I want to validate it. I think if there's anything the three of us have done, it's validate it. But then just to say, man, you have to find a larger identity. And I think that includes, like, beginning to look around at other things that you want to align with and support. There's a really famous guy on YouTube named John Green. He's a big mental health advocate. He's written a bunch of books. He and his podcasts and his YouTube channel followers called the Nerd Fighters, they sponsor, like, a JV division soccer team in Wimbledon, England.
Really?
Yeah, and they sponsor it. Like, they have their ads on their little stadium, and it's like their like jerseys are brought by the Nerd Fighters, and like they're dead into it. Which is part of why I think, like, even if you look at Ice Cream Social, like, look at Ice Cream Social, you have the scoops, right? It's an identity. Hopefully, people with pod therapy events, like, I'm a THERAPOD, I'm a THERAPAL, like, I'm an advocate for this cause. There is this group identity, and I do think that it's very real. And when something harms your group identity, it harms you.
Sure.
And I think that's true. I think that's a real thing. So I definitely acknowledge it and validate it, and then tell you, diversify, like, find a new identity, man. And, try to pick a good team. Don't pick something you're going to be ashamed of.
That's good advice.
But then lean in hard.
So, not Carolina.
Oh, shots fired. Stay down, Jim. But thanks for writing into the show, man. That was a really great question.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to read an email. I don't know what it is. Jim's got the script, so we'll get to that. Go ahead.
All right. This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Judi Schneider. Judi wants to give a shout-out to her dear friend, Dr. Hariyardi Shashima Abdul-Majid, and her amazing team members at Mercy Malaysia. Mercy Malaysia offers early counseling and psychosocial support for persons affected by disasters and gives the victims a safe space to express their feelings and thoughts. Sharima is currently caring for her father, who's suffering from Alzheimer's, while still organizing and planning for Mercy Malaysia when time allows. Judi wants the world to know how proud of Sharima she is and her astounding work ethic, and she wants her to know that she loves her, misses her warm hugs, and thinks about her wonderful father every day. If you'd like to help make the show possible, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
Okay, we're back. welcome back to Pod Therapy. Now we're going to read an email that I was teasing you about earlier.
Okay. We're going to read an email. All right, this one is titled From Numbness to Rage. Hi, friends. I've been fighting anxiety and depression for my entire adult life. After years of trying different therapists and medications, I finally reached a point where I was able to feel emotions instead of numbness. As a man in my mid-30s, I felt able to cope for the first time. I took actions to improve my life at home and work, and I earned positive results. I still felt symptoms creeping back occasionally, but I could get through it without too much effort. And then 2017 happened. And then 2018. 2019 isn't great right now either. I hate politics, but it dominates my world. My anxiety is in high gear about actual survival, climate change, and a renewed arms race with Russia being the two most obvious existential threats. And my depression is attacking me about the unabashedly awful things we are doing as matters of policy now. I know I can't be the only one who feels this way about all this, but what really drives me crazy is that all the mechanisms we have to fix this seem rigged. Gerrymandering, vote suppression, lies, distraction, corruption, tribalism, and the glacial movement of the justice system, which is also tainted with a smattering of corrupt stooges, are just a few of the factors that make me feel betrayed by and ashamed of my own countrymen and women. It manifests as rage at the general public. I'll shout at drivers, flip birds, and then drive like an aggressive a-hole just to get away from the outside world. I'll give the stink eye to someone at the grocery store because of their dumb red hat, which I assume is a MAGA reference. Too late, I realized that when I behave in such a way, it makes me part of the problem. I lose my patience so quickly these days, I take things personally more often. I know these are self-defeating behaviors, but I can't seem to stop myself. At least when I was struggling with self-criticism and avoidance, I could recognize that they were distortions of my own making. But now, it's like the world is lying to all of us. Some of us recognize the lies, but way too many of us believe the lies so wholeheartedly that there's a 50-50 chance that this could go on for another 6 years if we don't all destroy one another in the meantime. I guess my question is, how do I process all of this evidence that things are dangerously bad without torturing myself or lashing out at others? Thanks for hearing my rant, and thanks for your show. Despite the tone of my letter, you guys really do help me. Mason Miller, a.k.a. Night Scoops.
Well, thank you, Mason. Appreciate that. Yeah, you're not the only one that feels that way. And I think we also have to take a really good look at, where information is coming from and how much are we getting.
Yeah.
Because there is a magnification effect that occurs.
Yes.
Where when we get inundated with information is so much easier to get now than it was 50 years ago. We've got podcasts, we got 24-hour news networks, and if you're watching one that doesn't fit with your worldview, you go to a different one.
Yeah.
So you don't have to change your mind about stuff.
That's true.
And there's just so much information out there. I kind of had an experience like this with listening to Pod Save America.
Yeah.
Right? I love that podcast,
Yeah.
but kind of had to stop for a while.
Right.
I have to pace myself with it because if I just binge that podcast,
become really negative.
Yeah, and I get really depressed and I just feel like, oh my God, like what are we going to do? And the world's going to end. So I don't know. Do you have any?
I've noticed that in myself. There was a period of my life where I became so obsessed with politics. It was the only thing I listened to. It's the only thing I talked about. I've currently actually launched another podcast that has to do with politics, which I will not plug on this show.
Why not?
Yeah, I'll just let it be.
I was going to give you notes.
You're going to give me a note on it? Yeah, I'm sure you have notes. But that becomes my place to talk politics, right? And that way I don't have to infect our work, with that. But I was really toxically wrapped around politics at one point, and I had to recognize that regardless of my beliefs and regardless of my frustrations with this very large country that we live in and all of its moving parts, I was entirely responsible for the way that I was obsessing over this and how it was depleting my energy and hurting my spirit and hurting my life and hurting my relationships with people that otherwise I want to love and I want to be kind to. And being kind to somebody in a red hat or being kind, or my father-in-law choosing to be kind to me and knowing me for who I am, requires him to suspend all of that cloud of conspiracy and negativity and learn who I am as a person. And so this actually, I think writes larger than just politics. It writes into religion. It writes into sports. It writes into nations. It writes into a lot of different things. I really am a firm believer that whenever I meet somebody who I already know we disagree, I want to know that human. I want to really know who they are. Not so I can trap them. Not so I can set them up for a debate. I want to put the whole debate aside. And I literally just want to understand who they are as a person. And I think that that's kind of where I've found the cure to be. Because that is congruent and it is consistent with your beliefs, Mason. You know, you sound like a person who likes justice, sound like a person who likes compassion, you sound like a person who cares for others in a large scope, systemically. And I challenge you to bring that to your personal and bring that to the inner circle of saying, before I'm going to hold somebody accountable, I'm just going to hold them. And I think that's where it needs to start. Human-to-human relationships, that's where you have to make it. I don't know, that for me, that's been a very important part of how I've cured my own political obsession, where I start blanketly believing that every human is who I think they are. And like, that's a distortion, man. I have to unpack that. So it's a dangerous thing. A lot of people do this.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, you know, in regard to the, with the vitriol and everything, because that does seem to be the thing that is the difference between the people that I can have a really good conversation with politically and the people I can't.
Yeah.
Like there was a classmate of mine that I completely blocked on Facebook because the shit that he was posting was just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it was arguments that were like based off of nothing, but it was just like kind of like what you were saying. It was all encompassing.
Right.
It's all or nothing. You people are all this way.
Yes.
And this is always and you're going to destroy America. You're going to do blah 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 blah. You know, and I just kind of have to. All right, I can't do this, and I just had to distance myself from that person. Whereas my dad is kind of the political opposite of me as well.
Right.
But he and I can kind of have a conversation because we don't talk about, well, you people are all in favor of this and you want to do that. It's he will explain, well, here's my concerns.
Right.
These are the things that I am focused on, and this is how I think it's best that our country deals with it.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I can have that conversation all day.
Right.
I can't deal with the hurtful nature, like the name calling and the just completely the straw man arguments. Where you're completely misrepresenting the other side, so to make your side look better.
Well, I mean, to Mason's point too, it's not just this fuzzy reality of competing in tribalism. There is this reality to politics, and I think that the episode that we had Smitty Scoop, he had talked about how there were some people that were very depressed about Trump, and it kind of baffled him because he's like, really? Like, it's just politics, man. It's like when your sports team loses, like you don't. But what Mason's talking about is very true. If you really get into politics and you start to see that these decisions that these guys vote on makes a real world difference. Mm-hmm. If we go to war with a country, humans who weren't going to die are now going to die. You know, or if we don't fix the water in a city, you know, people that weren't going to die are now going to die. And so you start to realize, like, oh my goodness, there's like life and death consequences, future shaping consequences, things that will decide the wealth of nations and the future prosperity of generations. Then you start to feel like, oh my God, it's so big now that it's overwhelming to you. And that's what Mason's experiencing. It becomes so big and prescient that nothing else can seem to matter, and your body starts to react to that as if you were in peril. Right. And that's when you start having that fight or flight. That's when you start feeling that rage to fight back and to push back and to corner these people. And it's because you're allowing this big thing to zoom really close to you, which if you go back to our cognitive distortions episode, there's a word for that. We call it magnification and minimization. It's the binocular trick. If there's a bear a mile away and you pull out a pair of binoculars and look through them, that bear looks like he's 1 inch from your face. And if your body can believe that, you're going to start swiping at that bear in rage when it's maybe not as close as you think it is.
And I think that's the reason why most people struggle taking a break from stuff like this. Because with that magnification effect, you know, if I believe the bear is 5 feet away from me, I can't tune that out.
Right.
I can't take a break from it. Right. So, you know, my suggestion, you know, like what I did, you know, is kind of take a break, you know, just like develop some other hobbies, you know, like I'm going to go do some other things to get my mind off of this.
Yes.
But you have to be able to kind of talk yourself into believing like, yes, this is very important. And me taking a break from it doesn't minimize its importance.
Right.
It doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I have to take a break.
Yes.
And I can come back and I can still get involved. You know, these are things that Mason's obviously very passionate about. He can get involved in a lot of different ways, but it's also really important for some good self-care take your breaks, get away from it, get into other things that have nothing to do with politics.
Yeah, and so Mason, I'm going to give you two, I think, real-world, very practical pieces of advice as somebody who has dealt with this, and I think I empathize with how you feel, and it was really ruining my life. And this was in 2007. 2006, 2007, I was a real mess, and just politically vitriolic, a terrible person to be around. And I realized I was losing friends, and and I was hurting people that I really love, and it didn't make any sense. And so I kind of had to go through a political detox, like Nick's talking about. But here are two strategies that I've brought into my own life that I've found to be very helpful for me. The first draws on a technique that actually comes from ancient Judaism. And in ancient Judaism, you know that the teachers of Judaism are called rabbis, right?
That's the martial art where you take their momentum and move it against
them.
Yeah,
that one. You see it a lot in UFC. Right. And the rabbis whoop ass. They're really good. The more orthodox they are, the more their powers shine through. I want that game to exist now. I want it to be like Shaq Fu with religions. Somebody get to work on that, please. But so in ancient Judaism, to be a teacher, to be a rabbi, they had a rule that if you wanted to speak in their synagogue, the area where people teach and discuss matters of their religious law, before you had the right to address your opponent, before you had the right to be heard, you had to get up and you had to state your opponent's case to their utter satisfaction. And when they could nod their head and say, yes, you have represented me faithfully and accurately, that is what I believe, only then did you have the right to address the room with a rebuttal. And I've internalized that to be a standard that I want in myself. Before I rebut anybody's argument, before I ever challenge a person that I'm talking to, my first goal is to fully and exhaustively understand their position. And so that's the second piece of advice I have for you, is to take a posture of curiosity. Or really, this is still part of the first advice. Take a posture of curiosity, desire to understand. Even if you think you know what they believe, ask more. Not to trap them, but to legitimately understand them. It causes them to drop their guard. It causes a human connection. It causes you to feel like you're doing something. You're metabolizing this energy inside of yourself. And it has this other side effect of being authentically joining. And so to the second piece of advice, your desire, Mason, is to impact this conversation. Your desire is to see change in the world. Let me tell you how you debate with somebody and win the argument. You're never going to win by presenting these like statistics. You're never going to win by telling them about corruption. You're never going to win by reading news headlines at them. That doesn't change people's minds. You have to change their heart. And so if you really want to win somebody over to your side, I think you get to know them exhaustively. You feel like you fully understand their position. And when they learn that you're a good person and they like who you are, they become receptive to your stuff. And they start saying, so wait a minute. You seem like you're on the level. You seem like a normal guy. You seem really intelligent. Why do you like Bernie Sanders? And that's whenever I have an opportunity to say, all right, well, are you inviting me to share about that? Like, well, yeah. Okay, well, all right. So I will a little bit. And that's a really deep and meaningful conversation where we're talking about issues that really matter. And now we're not spouting propaganda anymore. So, Mason, that would be my two pieces of advice, along with Nick's bit about political detox. I think that's absolutely necessary, too. But there's a way to make this change happen in your life without suffering from all the consequences of it.
Yeah, or getting yourself in trouble by road rage and other
flipping
things.
people the bird.
Right.
Yeah. But thanks for writing in, man. That's a really good question. We don't get a lot of good political ones, but I believe politics is the plural of psychology. I think that it's all psychology. So super interested in that.
All right. Well, we're going to get into announcements and Patreons.
Yeah. So it is coming up here, the Pod Therapy Pinewood Derby. We have 2 cars. I just got my set. Did you get
my
yours
car too? Yep.
All right.
So I'm going to start working on it.
So we're going to have 4 cars in the race so far, and then we have a 5th one on its way. Somebody wrote us and got our shipping address, so they're going to be sending in their own car. So far we got 5 cars. If you want to add your car to the roster, got to get here before March 1st. Email podtherapyguys@gmail.com, and we'll give you our mailing address. Also, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We are building up a campaign to prepare for that. So if you have any hookups or anybody you think that we should be talking to kind of get the word out there about May being Mental Health Month, please let us know. And so I have no big apologies this week, Nick. I'm sure that there's many I should be apologizing for. But I guess I will apologize to my wife for asking her to be my girlfriend. I guess she doesn't seem to like that. So apparently that has not been a win.
Right. That doesn't mean you're going to stop doing it.
Yeah, no, I'm still going to keep running that bit.
And for our Patreons, at the beginning of every month, we say thank you to all of our TheraPods. This week, we are welcome. Oh, do we have any new?
No, we have no new TheraPods. Okay. Actually, wait, maybe we do.
Yeah, I thought we do.
I don't know. I'll tell you what. While I look it up, why don't you thank our Theraproducers?
Yeah, I'm going to go into the Theraproducers while Jim looks that up. We want to especially thank our bosses, the Elite Eight and mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the Theraproducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie, Junior Mint, Kayla Lansbury, David, Datascoop, Villalon, Judi Schneider, Gray Whitaker, Chairman of the Board, and Dr. Ben Don.
And yes, we do have some Therapods. We have Stacy Westerlin, who got a promotion at work, hopefully by following our advice. She wrote in about that.
That's right.
So she upgraded from a TheraPal to a TheraPod to show some love. We have a new TheraPal to recognize, Scoopatron, joined the party. And Robert Paulson, Robert, who changed his name to Robert Theraproducer for a Day Paulson, he finally jumped the shark. So he was at $4.99 and he became $5.01. He wanted to make a point of it. So Robert Paulson is also a new TheraPod in the mix as well. And we have another who wants to remain nameless. But thank you to all those who support the show, and thank you so much for supporting mental health. If you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited and enjoy extras that eventually we will put onto our Patreon again, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. And thank you for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we have for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by opening this episode's description in your podcast app, copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter @PodTherapyGuys, and now at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at www.podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.
Rock and roll.